Hello.
Hi, good to see you. Happy Friday.
Wait, no, this comes out on Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday. Okay, everything's going wrong, Mercury retrograde.
This is one where I'm like, it really is.
Yeah, usually I scoff at it, but
I have a list of things that have gone wrong this week or last week, whatever week it is. But we're here today with a lovely guest. We have
Chelsea.
Chelsea. Right. We truly love her, so this is emblematic of how we feel about Chelsea. You met Chelsea through Holisticism, and you were on her pod.
Yeah, she mentions it in this episode, but she asked me to be on her podcast, and I like very rarely get asked to be on podcasts, so I was like, oh my God, so honored. And she was great. She was such a good interviewer. I had such a fun time, and her podcast is called In My Non-Expert Opinion, and that was before we even had the 12th house. And since, we've stayed in touch, and then she joined the North Node a while ago, and I feel like at this point she's taken so many of our Notion classes, and she's just such a powerhouse herself with podcasting, and she's been in the game for a long time.
She really has. We talk more about how she started podcasting, how she took a break, what it's like to produce podcast content consistently. So it's really cool to hear her perspective. And she talks a lot about the systems that have allowed her to continue to publish content consistently and what she did to get there. And that was cool to hear because she's been, I think, making her podcast since 2017. We'll link it in the show notes. She also has podcasting labs. She has coaching, and she's also just an all-around treat to be around. She's one of those people where I'm like, oh, I would tell you all my secrets.
Totally. That's because she's such a good interviewer. I'm a bad interviewer, I would say. But when you listen to someone who's really good at asking the really good questions and getting people to spill, that is a skill. It takes time. It takes practice. And she teaches people how to do it.
It's funny because her podcast is, in my non-expert opinion, but now she's kind of a podcast expert. So we were so grateful to have Chelsea on and hear about her systems that allow her to keep creating as she travels the world. She's also a very intrepid traveler.
Yeah, and that's not easy. I know that you and I, Wallace, are like very easily dysregulated when we travel. We're both like, I need it. But it seems like Chelsea really has that down pat, and I think her systems have helped her do that. Let's get into the episode.
You might be hearing a lot of this talk about system spells and wondering, what is this?
What is that? System Spells is our class under the Notion for Magical Bodies universe, where we teach you, squiggly-brained listeners like us, how to use systems to help you thrive so you can feel like you have your shit together, which is a really nice way to feel, honestly.
A lot of what we teach in this class is about how to set up systems for your business, but it doesn't start and stop there. It can be for any part of your life. And it's really to help you organize and streamline processes in your life that you feel might be holding you back from getting the things done that you want to get done.
Exactly. I'm not a naturally organized, clean, tidy, deliberate, disciplined person. I'm just not. I have ADHD. I'm intuitive. I'm really creative, and I'm good at a lot of other things. Organization is not one of them. And in order to run your own business or go do things in the world, you kind of have to be able to follow through, you know? So the whole point of the System Spells class is to teach those of us who are not naturally really good at these things, who don't like to use a Google Calendar, who've never kept up with a planner in their lives, how to stay on track and actually build systems that work for us and our brains rather than work against us. And we've heard from so many of our alumni that this class has literally changed their lives, which is the highest compliment. So we mentioned that throughout, and we actually have a System Spells intensive coming up on June 18th and June 19th. Instead of taking the class over 2 weeks, you'll take it over 2 days. So if you love to binge on Netflix or you love to binge this podcast, you will absolutely love our System Spells intensive. You can sign up at notionforbaddies.com. Chelsea, go ahead and introduce yourself. We're so happy that you're here.
Finally on the pod.
Yes, I'm so stoked. So I'm Chelsea Riffe. I'm a mindset and podcast coach, and I help people launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts through strategy and a whole lot of personality.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, you do. I was just reading an article about some girl who has this crazy, amazing podcast and how she did it. And when I was actually crunching the numbers on it, I was like, wait, her podcast is like the same as our podcasts, all of us here. It was so funny how she just, no shade to her at all, but like how marketing speak and like how you set yourself up can totally set you apart. And it reminded me of you because you're so good at sort of like finding that niche. I didn't say niche, Wallace. Niche. And that like unique thing that someone may have to start a podcast and what really makes them stand out. And also it makes their content valuable and like highlighting it. And I think so many people are afraid that no one will listen or they have nothing interesting to say or that they don't know like what they could possibly make that's interesting. And just after spending the weekend with you at QuantumCon and just knowing you from the North Node, I know that's your superpower.
Oh, thank you.
I want to hype you up.
My tagline, like podcasting is my superpower. Put it on my website.
Honestly, for real.
Totally. It should be.
I love that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'll also have to send you this article after this.
That is so helpful because I was actually just meeting with a podcast client yesterday and she had taken a podcast course and she was showing me her media kit and she was like, yeah, the course creator told us like fudge our numbers a little bit. And I was like, oh, okay. We're just like making shit up now. Okay. Didn't know that, but
it seems to be a theme. That's what that's what lots of men told me when I was raising money for Holisticism. They're like, just lie about your numbers. And I was like, that's not kind of what I do. I have way too much anxiety to lie about my numbers. I'm sorry.
I know. I was like, there's a way to position yourself where you don't have to like scam your way into brand deals, but we're in spring and summer, so maybe that's the move. I don't know.
Right. Like, I think people don't realize that they're already impressive. Like, the fact that you're just like showing up, honestly, is already way more impressive than like most people.
That's
true.
Know?
And you have to own that. Like,
yeah. And that you're showing up consistently, which I feel like is so one of the really incredible things about your work too, is how long you've been showing up consistently. Like, how long have you had your podcast now?
Since 2017.
Yeah, that's
dude.
Unreal.
It's weird to think that I've committed to something this long because I've never committed to anything this long. And I think it just shows like when you find a medium that works for you, you want to keep being consistent. And I saw that when I took a break one time, I was like, this is a lot of work. I'm just going to take 4 to 6 months off. Like it completely derailed my podcast. And I was like, you know what? It doesn't matter what I'm talking about each week to an extent. Like people just want to hear from you. And so I was like, I'm just going to make a commitment to show up every week. So I haven't taken a break probably in 2 or 3 years. I might in July because I'm starting to travel, but it kind of goes along with the theme of what you all have been talking about of like people just want to hear from you and they want consistency. They don't need you to deliver expert level industry professional advice. It's just like, I'm interested in your takes. And I noticed that with myself, like, oh, people actually do want to hear about my dating life or like my travel stories or something. And it's something that when I started, I didn't think that.
I think especially with podcasts, it's such an interesting medium. Like people want to hang out and we all, and I have talked about this before. It's like a conversation that you can participate in without having to like put the energy of participating in.
You like, feel like you're with your friends, but you didn't have to leave your house.
But they don't know you exist.
Exactly. Yeah. I was listening to you this morning and I was like, oh, I literally feel like I'm hanging out with them and like we're in my bathroom getting ready. Maybe not, but it's still really exciting.
I love getting ready personally. It's my favorite way to hang out with my friends. Like, I miss it from going out time. So I love that.
Podcasting is the new going out.
It really is.
It's the staying in.
But Chels, even though you've been creating your podcast for a long time, it sounds like you didn't have necessarily a ton of systems behind you and your content creation process, which I'm just guessing here, but was that maybe why you had to take so much time off for the podcast for a while?
Yeah, I was doing it when I had a full-time job. So I was literally doing it on my lunch breaks. We worked in a WeWork, so I would use the WeWork conference spaces and like invite guests in. It was actually pretty funny because people thought it was my full-time job because of the WeWork setup. And I was like, no, I'm on my lunch break and we have to make this an hour. So we got to hurry and like get this done.
I love that. So scrappy of you.
Parameters are good, you know? It's nice to have some like, we got to get this done. It's true.
Exactly. So I was like, I had that and I genuinely loved doing it. So the motivation to do it was there. It was just eventually, there were no systems. There was no content planning. It was kind of just like I would meet people and they would say, oh, you should meet this person. I'm like, yeah, I'll interview them this week. And then I would interview that person. They're like, you should meet this person. And I got really lucky with all the guests I had on in the beginning, but then it started to pile on and then people were reaching out and I want to be on your podcast. But I was like, wait, I want this person to be on my podcast, but I know you're cool, but it was just so overwhelming. And then full-time job. I was also 27 or 28 and I was like, I still want to party and have fun. So I'm not going to plan ahead and I'm just going to wing it. And then eventually, I took a really long break. And actually, even when I came back, it was really sporadic. And I said that I was like, hey, I'm just going to post when I want to post, just buckle up and you'll be along for the ride. And it's interesting because I actually do think podcasters have more flexibility with that because when you subscribe, people do just get that alert right away.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when people like what you do and you want to set that consistent schedule up, when you veer from that, they are kind of like, okay, well, is she doing this or not? And yeah, that energy ended up being not sustainable. And I was like, okay, I need to clean my shit up.
Yeah. Like I think podcasting especially, or any type of content, it's like a habit, right? To ingest it. I think I will speak for myself. I'm such a podcast person. Like I know when my favorite podcasts come out. I know when they publish. I like look forward to them and I want to listen to them that day. And if they go away, it kind of like something else fills my time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Gets like crowded out. Even if I really love the content, it sort of gets dropped down on my list, and that consistency really matters. I feel like we found that when we took our break with this podcast, The 12th House. Not that like people went away, but it takes a little bit of time for people to be like, oh, good, you're back. Okay, cool. Yeah. And I like this a lot.
We actually did a similar thing this year. At the beginning, we were like, okay, well, we're going to fully launch in like March or April, but we're going to drip stuff out slowly. And I think that you kind of have to be on or off.
Yeah.
I think we
like
found
dating.
that, that in-between zone, because we like to also make a lot of serialized, editorialized content. So having that kind of one-off stuff isn't really the vibe of this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I always tell clients, don't start out committing to a weekly podcast because it's like a full-time job. I would do seasons. I would do bi-weekly because also people get so invested into you and what you have to say that they are going to want more from you and they are going to be waiting for that episode to drop. And it is a little bit jarring when your favorite podcaster just disappears for like 3 months and you're like, I guess they're not doing it anymore.
Like, are you okay?
Yeah. Like, what happened? And I think you guys know this too, probably. Like, there's a stat that I think most people drop off after 7 episodes.
Yeah.
And I do think that's from a lack of like planning and systems and not realizing how much work goes into a podcast.
100%.
Absolutely.
I think it sounds really ezy to like sit in front of a mic and maybe like interview someone. Like you just have to have a conversation. It is not. That is not what it is like.
No.
That is
I know.
so not what
I
it is like.
I like started out my marketing like that. I was like, it's so easy. You just plug in a microphone and record and you're done. And then I was like, Chelsea, that's not true. Like that's literally why I stopped for a second. Like it is so much work. And then I realized, yeah, people need to understand before they commit to it that it's not just plugging in a microphone and saying a few things on the mic.
No, and I will say all of the people who, at least I have heard, be like, everyone has a podcast these days and kind of make those
They don't have
one-off
podcasts.
Yeah. I'm like, you don't, because you wouldn't say that.
I'm also like, when people say that, I'm like, I don't know that many people that have podcasts. I'm also from a really small town in Florida. So I'm like one of the only podcasters in my county probably. But yeah, it's so interesting when people say that. I'm like, people have podcasts, but they don't keep them up. They usually stop after like 5 episodes.
Yeah,
it's true. And when you look at the stats of what are the top 10, 5, 1% of downloads on podcasts, you really learn that yes, it's a new medium with a lot of new adopters, but it's not crowded because it's not easy.
It's not easy. And to your point on that stat, I just read something too that like, if you have more than like 25 downloads in your first episode, you're already in the top 50% of podcasters because so many people just give up and like don't actually keep consistent. And again, a lot of people launch, but then they don't stay consistent or keep posting.
Right.
Yeah.
And to your point, the whole saturation argument, I'm like, that's kind of, if people think it's saturated, I'm like, that's kind of good that there's a market. It shows that people are interested. It's like, I always use this analogy of a library. I'm like, there's not too many self-help books. Like people keep publishing self-help books. People keep publishing spiritual books. We'll never stop consuming them because when you like one thing, you just want more of it. So in my opinion, I'm always like, it's good if you feel like it's saturated because people are loving it and like thirsty for that style of content and that medium. So jump on it while you can.
I love that analogy.
That's such a good analogy. And people like will find you, especially with podcasts, and binge all of your content. And that is the coolest thing happened to me this week. I ran into someone on the street and she's like, Michelle Pelazon? Like, hi. I looked terrible. It was like our day off after QuantumCon. Her name's Paige. Hey, Paige. She was like, oh my gosh, I listened to the 12th House. I just found it a couple months ago and I binged the whole thing. And I was like, about to cry. But, this podcast has been around for a year and a half and they just found it and they listened to every single episode. Like it sounds like a couple
I did that
months.
too. When I found you guys, I was like, bye. I just binged the whole entire thing. And then I was like, sign up for North Node. Like that's actually how I ended up becoming such an active member, was through your podcast.
Yeah, it's so cool. But to your point and to what you do, like you really need systems to, number one, keep yourself from burning out. And number two, like actually support the creation process, because if you're worried about all the admin stuff, I don't know about you, Chelsea, I would love to hear your perspective, but I know for me, and I think I can speak for Wallace too, like if we're caught up in admin, our creative brains basically turn off. Like we can't come up with that, like the juicy stuff that is what people love about us. What was it like for you before you had those systems integrated for yourself? Or I guess let's stop there.
First of all, without systems, I had zero promotion because I literally didn't have the bandwidth. So I didn't have an email list. Right. Yeah, I didn't have, I think just 2 years ago, I started an Instagram for it, and I'm still kind of figuring out the social media piece because that's like a whole other systems ballgame.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't have any promotion. So that's something looking back, I'm like, wow, I probably could have grown this podcast in a much different way if I had proper systems in place. But because I committed to a weekly episode, the turnaround was so quick. It was basically record, edit, publish, maybe throw up a few Instagram stories, and then it's like, we're already on to the next episode. So I, again, had no promotion. I had no opportunity to like expand on what I ever talked about. It was always just like, okay, next one. And that's how I burned out so quickly too, because I was like, this is unsustainable. And then I also feel like I stopped talking about what I really wanted to talk about. To your point, the creative piece, I didn't have the space to actually like open up my mind to topics that I wanted to talk about. So what I did instead was basically bring on a ton of guests to kind of like carry through my content. And I will say I love interviewing. It's something that I love. I'm just a curious person in general.
And you're really good at it. And not everyone's a good interviewer. In fact, most people are not good interviewers.
This is true.
I went to school for it. So I'm like, I hope that $50,000+ I spent on my master's really like came into play. But yeah, I love interviewing. But there was a point where I like looked at my kind of email one time and I was like, I'm pretty sure my next 14 episodes are interviews, and that gives me no space to talk about things that I want to talk about. And when I actually looked at my data, which by the way, I also never really had time to do because I was always just turning around the podcast, I was like, oh, this is really interesting that my most downloaded episodes are the one where I talked to my sister about dating or my mom came in to give advice around dating, not all these like expert interviews and influencers and authors. So it was kind of like I had almost in a way booked out my content calendar. And I say that in air quotes because there was like no content calendar, my fake content calendar with guests to just keep the content going. But when you looked at the data, that wasn't what was performing well. People wanted to hear from me, but then it created this vicious cycle where I didn't have time to create the things I wanted to create. So it just turned into a chore. It was just like, okay, well, I have my podcast. I committed to it. I guess I'll just keep it up. Here's another guest. And I started like resenting it a lot. I was just like, okay, like get ready, another episode dropping. But I lost the fun in it.
Yeah. And what you are pointing out is like reassessment, right? Which is like so important to any like system, because systems can sound so boring, so dry, like so like the opposite of like creative freedom. They sound like rigid, at least to me, as like a squiggly brained, intuitive, very creative person. And my favorite thing about systems is that they give us the time to be like, wait, what? Do I like doing this thing? Is this thing working? Like, is it giving me pleasure? Is it revitalizing me, rejuvenating me, regenerating me and my work? And if not, like, why? I need to fix that. Or else we just like go way too far down this path of doing things because we feel indebted to them, or like we're supposed to be doing it. And that's what kills your creative passion and eventually like kills any project, because people can feel that energy behind what you do too.
Big shout out to Mendocino Farms. Hopefully somewhere near you, because we're addicted to it.
Where's that?
Another product or another place.
but they also are a service and a place.
Their sandwiches are products, but the idea is a service.
Exactly. And the place is a place in our minds that we go to every time we're hungry and we feel good.
I mean, I almost never want Sweetgreen, and I almost always want Mendocino Farms.
Oh, it's so true. I always want Mendocino Farms.
Me too. I'm like, give me a sandwich or give me death.
And you know what? We want to thank them, but also they're thanking you, dear listener, with the code Holisticism for $5 off any order.
Yeah, what's your favorite
Pretty
order?
great. Well, I have a sandwich order. I have
No, you have to say it.
build your own sandwich. It's like the most basic sandwich ever.
It's so good though.
It's like toasted bread.
Gluten-free.
Yeah, something about their toasted gluten-free bread. I don't know what it is because I'll go gluten otherwise. With mustard, cheddar cheese, lettuce, tomato. I think that's it.
Yeah, that's it.
It's like the most basic, like, kind of recession sandwich.
It really is. Every time I slack you for your order, I'm like, I have it saved, but I just want to confirm that this is still what you want.
Still.
Like, that's it. That's what I want.
I also love their avocado quinoa salad.
Oh,
I don't even like quinoa, but I like theirs.
I know. It's so, everything they make is so good. I'm into their caprese.
Oh, that's your sando.
Yeah.
Order.
And then my order is half sandwich, half
soup,
side.
Oh, couscous.
Yep. And I love when they you made a little couscous. It's really good.
It's called crack couscous. Everyone loves it. You can't go back.
It's so good.
Yeah.
And I like the cookies.
Oh, yeah.
They have good cookies.
All right. This is an episode.
That's your order.
Mendo.
But honestly, they're also really affordable. Like, that's my kind of gripe with Sweetgreen is I'm like, why am I paying $22 for a salad that I don't even like? And Mendo's affordable. They deliver, and you can use this $5 off coupon for basically free lunch. You're welcome.
I might get Mendo tonight.
It actually sounds so good. Ethan is going to Pilates instead of eating dinner with me, so I might get myself a Mendo.
Get your order. And thank you, Mendo, for also sponsoring QuantumCon.
We love you. Really.
We are thinking and talking about systems today and what makes that consistent creation possible. And Chelsea, to your point, you start resenting the thing that you love, really, when you don't have like a moment to pull back and really look from a bird's eye view. What is the point of this? Why are we doing this? Do I even want guests? What is the content that we really want to talk about? And I'm curious to know for you, what was that turnaround point where you were like, I can't keep going down this path?
Your moment of highest tension, you might say.
Oh, yeah. So interestingly enough, podcast swaps, I don't even think this is a secret, are like one of the best ways to grow your podcast. So I was on this podcast and all of a sudden I had leads like literally blowing up. It was like that moment that you're like, oh shit, my business is about to pop off. And then like all of a sudden I was getting these leads and I was like, oh my gosh. So I was dealing with I had a lack of systems in my business too. So I was dealing with all these leads coming in, people ready to work with me. But then I also had to keep up this podcast, and then I had interviews, and I was trying to schedule these clients, and it was just a mess. I was actually like having a little bit of a nervous breakdown, and I'm like, this is crazy. So I remember my moment of highest tension was like, I can't do this by myself. So I hired a virtual assistant who specialized in systems. Like her title is literally system specialist.
Cool.
Wow. And she was like, yeah, she's like, we have an opportunity to clean up a lot here. So she's like, we can make an onboarding process for your clients. And I think we can almost mimic the same thing for your podcast. Like when you have a guest, they fill out a form and then it automates and goes to your Google Drive and then it alerts you. And like she set up all these things that's not how my brain worked. And so having someone lay that out for me and show me the importance of that. And then to your point, show me how much free time it created for me to be more creative, because I did think that. When I hired her, I was like, just so you know, I hate all project management software. I write everything in a notebook. I have a really good photographic memory. So like anything you ask, I literally thought my memory was like a project management tool. I was like, I'll remember everything. And then of course, as I started getting busier and busier, things were just slipping through the cracks. And I also didn't like how I was not really keeping my guests in the loop. It was like, oh shit, their episode just went live and like they don't even know, and I'm not really sending them a link, and by the time I sent it to them it was like 3 weeks late. Right. So then that's when I was like, okay, this is actually a hot mess. Like we need to clean up the podcast systems, and we worked really hard for honestly like a year trying to clean up how we not only run the podcast on the back end, but then alert guests and then make it easier for me so I can just show up and record versus piecemealing everything together and hoping to like, Frankenstein something by the end of the week and have a podcast.
Yeah. I like how you also said we took almost a year, because I think there's a lot of upfront work in setting up systems, but they're also compounding.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're constantly adjusting them as you go and refining them, and hopefully if they're robust, they continue to, provide like dividends, for lack of a better word, but they really are compounding and evolving and kind of like alive beings. And I think people can get frustrated really easily with like, oh, this isn't working. I now hate all systems.
Yeah, we experienced that where in the beginning I was like, everything she was showing me, I was like, nope, hate it, don't like it.
Hate that.
I hate this. Yeah, I was like, I'm flowy, I'm an Aquarius, so I'm like always rebelling and disrupting. I was like, it's not like innovative enough for me, but then it was just like, why does it need to be innovative?
Me too. I'm like, sometimes I'm like, sorry, I have to apologize. I just argued for the sake of arguing. I don't even really believe in.
Oh my God. I've actually heard you say that. I don't even really believe in this, but. Yeah.
That happened with my VA. She was like, maybe we should like color code your calendar. I was like, I don't do color coding. And then she looked at it recently. She's like, your whole calendar is color coded. I was like, I may have misspoke. So yeah, I like when she set it up, to your point, I did not like it. We had to adjust. But then the other thing was when I started getting busier and people started wanting to be on my podcast, pitching me more, my inbox was now full of not only my clients, but guests that I was actively interviewing, or that whole process was set up, or pitching me. So then my email inbox was like a hot mess. So then we had to figure out a system for filtering my emails. And then I had to bring people on because I was like, I actually just can't do this by myself. I need an editor. I need someone that's like filtering these requests. I just need help. And so we had to adjust the system again, because now we had to loop the editor in. We have to loop the VA in. We have to loop the guest in. And so this is wild, but my VA actually created like this swim lane of, it looks like what engineers probably create for an actual like product launch of a tech company.
Yeah,
but
love that.
I was like, we need that because there's so many pieces involved, and especially virtual, like the files and the downloads and the graphics, and oh my gosh, she created this crazy system. But to your point, it was not easy. In the beginning, I hated it, and it took us a long time, and we're still kind of testing it and being like, oh, that one piece doesn't really work. We're going to have to take that out. But I can see it's worth all this back and forth, because in the end, it's going to allow me to just show up and record and be creative.
Yeah. I mean, customizing systems to also how your brain works, and as you bring on people to your team, what works for them. Because if you have one person who's like, nope, it doesn't work for me, I don't pay attention to deadlines in that way, that means that the whole system needs to be like, you kind of have to shake it up for that person. But I'm so curious, like we've been talking about systems for just kind of organizing your podcast, but I want to hear about the new systems that you've implemented for actually making your content, like what you learned in Notion for Magical Baddies, and also like what were you trying before that just didn't work for you? Because for me, that's when I feel like I was resistant to systems because I tried things that were supposed to work for other people, but never really worked for my brain. And then when I found what worked for me, it was like, oh, great, this is easy. So what was that for you?
So what did not work was basically seeing a task and then seeing all the little subtasks that had to go with it in one large list. Ugh. Because I would just, for example, I'll just say the software Asana, at least the way we had built it was like you open up and it was like 100 tasks, and then each one had a date and this and that. And I was like, my brain is completely shutting down when I open this.
It's so I'm overwhelming.
Like, we cannot use Asana.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is overwhelming. I like just simplicity, like header, bullet, bullet, bullet. Header, bullet, bullet, bullet. Like that's how my brain works. So we noticed that didn't work. And then I tried switching to Notion without ever watching any Notion trainings. So I was just like, bold, pick a template. See what happens. And then I was like, that's not really working because I don't even know how to use this thing. And then I took Notion for Magical Baddies, the digital systems and spells. And what that helped me with actually from a creative standpoint was archetype embodiment. So I was like, I'm going to be the Joker. I'm going to be the creative director. I'm going to be the prolific creator. And I remember it allowed me to have more fun on my podcast. And I remember like getting more reviews during that time and people DMing me like, I'm loving your content. It's so fun and this and that. And then I was having more fun on Instagram. And I realized too that the way I had like the archetype embodiment too of like becoming the prolific creator was also becoming the smarter creator of like repurposing things. So then I would take whatever I had taken or talked about on my podcast, repurpose it for my Instagram and email. And I was like, why have I not been doing this for 4 years? Like, this is so much easier. Yep. And I used to think of everything as 3 separate entities. Like, my email is this whole different thing from my podcast and my Instagram. So every time I had to get on one of these platforms, it was like a total nervous shutdown of like, now I have to put on my writer hat. Now I have to put on my Reels hat. And I'm like, no, you can actually just take the content from the podcast and repurpose it. And then I think also digital alters, what it really helped me do too was think of content not so rigidly. Like, I remember you had us do an exercise of like, you know, what's like a core belief you have, and then like sub beliefs around that basically, and then an op-ed argument. And you're like, you made us all break out into breakout rooms and like, what's just something you're thinking about right now? And I was like, how does this have anything to do with my podcast? Like, this is not helpful.
You're like, I am so annoyed. Michelle is off topic.
I was like, these are not my content pillars. And then I remember my thing actually was scamming. And I was like, this is really interesting. And then, you start to see the thread of like, oh, scamming has to do with like human connection and emotion, and people want to be accepted. And why are we so easily persuaded, and psychology. And then it's like, oh, I actually could see how this fits into my content. And it started making me think of content in such a different way that now when I create content, it's much more thoughtful and it's much more researched, and I have more opinionated stances on it, which I feel like before it was just kind of like, oh, fluffy little topic of the week. And now it's like, no, I have time to actually form an opinion around it because I have systems set up. So I'm not worried about downloading a link, sending it to a guest. Like, that's all taken care of already. So I have time to actually bring up things to either back up my argument or, bring in a guest that can help me like explain that a little bit better. And so I feel like that system just in and of itself of like content planning and content creation changed the game for me. Even recently, I also created my own little podcast planning template inside Notion. And I'm like, oh my God, I actually have a clear outline of how many episodes I have to go until I like hit a certain point. And so I could start turning down guests, but in a way that wasn't like, I don't know. I used to just be like, I don't know my calendar. Like, I can't help, like, we'll just regroup when I can. And now I'm like, oh no, I can actually see that my calendar is booked through July. Like, I do not want to do an interview with you because it's going to be irrelevant.
Exactly.
Let's circle back in the fall. And I can easily just look at that system in Notion and be like, here's my plans. It also helps with brand partnerships too. I'm like, hey, my plans are locked in. And they're like, oh, okay, let's talk. Where before I didn't have that confidence because I literally had no systems or content calendar or anything.
Yeah.
So now it's just been incredible. Not only again from an organization standpoint, but I can tell, like, I can feel my content is getting better, and I can tell that from the data, qualitative and quantitative. And so all around, it's just been amazing to see that like systems is not a dirty word.
I'm geeking out. I'm like, I want to see your system.
I know.
You need to do a show and tell. Chelsea, this has been so lovely, and we could talk to you endlessly, and we probably should do a part 2.
I know.
That's no joke. But we'd love to direct people to your podcast, your content. So what do you want people to check out?
Yeah, my podcast itself is called In My Non-Expert Opinion. And then my website is chelseariffe.com. My Instagram is @ChelseaRiffe. And I always am doing labs, like monthly labs. I have one coming up called Interview Lab, where you're going to learn the art of interviewing. I'll have one around monetizing and pitching brands and running your own paywalls and how to really monetize in non-traditional ways. And right now I'm in the space of making podcasters excited about podcasting again and better storytellers. So that's what a lot of my content is now, is one-on-one coaching and courses to help you actually really refine your skills as a storyteller.
And you're so good at it.
I know. Like, this
you.
is just like my appetite is wet.
Oh,
wait,
okay.
My palate.
I'm a little sexual, but
I was like, wait, what?
I'm just like, more.
Yeah, there you go. So listeners, if you want a part 2 with Chelsea, maybe we'll go like deep dive behind the scenes on the ins and outs of how to make a podcast, and maybe like what we wish we'd known.
Ooh.
And best practices. Let us know in the reviews.
Upvote.
Yeah. Upvote, listen, share, and
let us know.
Thanks, Chelsea.
The 12 Lives is produced by yours truly, Wallace Miller Blanchard. Our theme music is made by Nathan McKay, and our wonderful editing is done by Softer Sound Studios, who you can find more information about in our show notes.